my book, The Art of Storytelling, I give you 14 steps on how to craft a captivating story. Before we leave step 12, I want our storytellers to illustrate for you one activity. And this is where you take one action, one phrase, and you embellish it. Now, usually doing this doesn't actually affect that particular story. But you'll find that by doing this activity, it will free you up to become more descriptive when you tell your stories. I think you're going to enjoy this section. Settle back and watch our storytellers just embellish one lone action.
As each toe scraped across the sandy stones, her panic increased incrementally as she realized that with each subsequent movement of a toe, she was becoming more and more unstable. She feared that by the time she got to that 6th or 7th toe, she would be well on her way to falling flat on her face. As the seagulls cawed above and the waves crashed on the shore, she started to hear sounds that made her wonder about what she was doing. The waves crashing against the rocky beach made a sound like bee, bee, bee. The seagulls overhead were cawing, and as the sound drifted down to her, she swore that in it she could hear whoo, whoo, whoo. And as the water filtered through the stones back out into the ocean, she could swear that what she heard from them was, "You are, you are, you are." And hearing it all together, she kept hearing this repeated phrase, "Be who you are, be who you are." No, another toe, less and less stable. She was becoming panicked, and finally, as her 7th and 8th toe went pointing out, she went plunging down face forward onto the beach. The rocks and the sand came rushing up toward her face. She was terrified. The horror was pumping through her veins, and she knew that this was going to hurt. And she was right. She smashed into the sand, into the stones. A little tear fell from the corner of one of her eyes and ran down her eye stalk.
The mouse ran hard. He had saw an opportunity when the cat wasn't around. He knew that he could get to that piece of food over there. He couldn't tell what it was because his eyesight was not as good, but oh, the smell had drawn him closer and closer. He and his friend both went together to scope it out. Surely, they'd been warned by their parents not to go out without caution. Oh, but they thought this was their opportunity, and the smell was so great. They went to find out what it was, and it was almost like it was a trap. Oh, it wasn't a trap, but it sure seemed like as they got close to that object of food, it was 2 grapes that had fallen down, and it was just right there. They could get it. But just as they got close, they saw the cat. The cat had been sleeping over there next to the fireplace. Oh, there was no fire in the fireplace, but the cat had remembered former days, and it was a favorite spot. And just about the time they had got up to those grapes, the cat heard the noise, smelled the smell, and turned his head. The eyes met, and they knew, leave the grapes. Grandpa had been right. Parents had warned them. They turned and ran. Oh, they ran. But that cat was up. As if it was standing all the time, but they knew it hadn't been. The actions was just so quick that the cat was on its feet and hesitated. It saw the span of space that they had to run and knew that it had time. Oh, they ran and ran. The cat just stood there looking at him. Me and my friend ran, and all of a sudden, claws out of nowhere came out and grabbed my friend. Just enough time for me to dash into the hole, but I could hear the commotion. And I knew it was over.
Bodacious has his head down and he's grazing on that fresh spring grass. Every once in a while he takes just the slightest step forward to reach another clump of grass. He curls back his lips and bites down on that grass and pulls it out. Chews and chews and chews that grass. His ears kind of twitch back and forth. Every once in a while his tail swishes to get a fly away from him. But then he goes back down to the grass and pulls out another fresh clump that he can chew on. He's got those beautiful big cow eyes, and the eyelashes kind of flutter down and flutter up because it's a lazy spring day, and he's not going to exert himself for anything much more than that fresh green grass.
And so the dog had that big old soup bone in his mouth, and he was making his way across that wooden bridge when he looked down and saw another dog. And that dog had a bone bigger than his own. Oh, he didn't want to have that little one in his mouth. He wanted to have that one. So he reared back on his hind legs. He jumped high, high into the air as if floating. He looked down and he saw that dog reaching out for him below. And as he watched that dog, the bone fell out of his mouth, and he noticed that his bone had fallen out of his mouth. And he realized too soon what was happening, and he fell splash down into the water.
He has hit that tin box with the spade, and that click, which always brings a thrill to him. He sets the shovel down, and now he has to kneel at the hole. Well, of course, there's still fresh dirt, loose dirt all around the box. So he takes and reaches down into the hole and scrapes the dirt with his hands. His hands hadn't been clean anyway, so it didn't matter, did it? And as he did, he could feel the cool wetness of that moist dirt. And now he's scraped enough, he can find the little handle that lays flat, but if you pick it up, it will turn up, and he begins to pull that tin box through the soil. And it has that certain weight to it. 10 pounds maybe. And he can feel in his arm the pull, the tug. He puts his other hand on the handle, so using both hands, he gives it a and it gives. But it's a slow process for him, for he's an old man and he's a skinny little thing, no muscle. And he again. And now the box breaks totally free from the earth below. And he drags it along the side of that hole until he can set it there on the new grass next to him. And he kneels next to that tin and undoes the clasp, as if he were kneeling next to an altar. And he opens it. You can hear the creak of that old hinge. He can hardly contain himself, for every time he sees the gold inside, it brings a new thrill to him. This time he pauses, he closes his eyes, and he waits. And then he opens it. And the joy that fills his heart is gold, wonderful, wonderful gold, and it's his.
And as his son got closer, his eyebrows raised in anticipation, and Michael bent over just a little bit to be closer to Luke's height. And when Luke's arms came around his neck, Michael grabbed him, held him close, and he could feel Luke's warm face smearing against his sweaty cheek. And he could hear Luke telling him all the things that Mother had told him to say, that it was time to come home for supper soon, and that all the games that he and his brother had been playing all day, and all the things he wanted to show him and show off, and Michael just squeezed him tighter and felt the warmth of Luke's body merging with the sweat and the warmth of his own work. I don't know.